Hello, everybody. It's 9:53 a.m. Central Time on the 12th of April, 2023, and I've got you here back on my stream. I'm recording a quick video. It's still Wednesday here in the United States, by the way. Recording a quick video to show you some news that just broke in my chat room, which I am shocked to hear, but not too shocked to hear because I have a little bit of a story to tell you along with this. Need to open up a display capture. Fort Tryon in New York on fire. Fort Tryon in New York. Now, this is just too odd because we get into videos which I put out over the past few weeks on my YouTube channel talking about Fort Tryon and bringing up the previous burned down church at Notre Dame, talking about that in particular, the burning down and destruction of spots. We talked about this in particular. Let me get a display capture open so you can see what I'm talking about here over on my YouTube channel. You can go back through my videos over the past several weeks, even going back. Here's my interview with Bernie and the guys over at Autodidactic and all the other guys on there, Crypto Alchemist, talking about these structures in particular and then the destruction of them and the burning down. I bring up about the Notre Dame Church on this 5-hour long episode. I think I talk about it in there specifically. So that being said, we get over to this, and I brought up Fort Tryon in this broadcast. I show it in, I think, episode number 2. I don't know if it's episode number 2 or the start of episode number 3. Let's just see. I could fast forward it through here. We get into, yeah. Here it is. Okay. So in here, I'm showing Fort Tryon, New York, and I'm showing the castle-like nature on the back side of Fort Tryon Park of what is clearly the old Star Fort, Bastion Fort that the housing projects are built on top of, with the old arrow shot spots out the side of the fort. It's amazing, and I show it, and we talk about this at length in the video, Fort Tryon in particular. I then zoom out, show around the park, show around the area, show the underside of the buildings, showing that they're ancient, and go back a long ways, even further than we're told, and found the ancient megalithic structures there. The reason I'm bringing that up is because Fort Tryon's on fire. Fort Tryon, another one. Now, this is very interesting because this brings up the Notre Dame Cathedral and the ancient star forts. Now, how does the Notre Dame Cathedral tie in? Well, I have to tell you the story again. The story that I told, I think, on Autodidactic, and if I didn't tell it, I'm telling it now, that we go back a few days before the fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, when the steeple burned down. Well, let me go open it up so you can see it. The day before the fire, so April 14th, somebody was up there recording the bells ringing and the stone structure and metal structure that's here that burned down. And the bells rang for 10 minutes the day before in a very, very long, not normal pattern, I would call that. And it goes on, and people recorded it because it was such a thing for them to be ringing it. Okay, anyway then. In the days before this, so let's just say at the start of April, I cannot find the video anymore, but I shared it to my audience. So thousands of people saw this, and if you're in the chat room, you can maybe press 1 if you actually saw this. It probably won't be many people that respond this way, but some people had to have seen it when I shared it, which was the video from a guy in Russia who figured out that the insides of the churches were used as ancient antennas with resonance cavities up in the center of the towers and spires, used to transmit some kind of wireless power. People said he was nuts. And he gave Notre Dame as the example in his video. This was in the week leading up to the Notre Dame fire. Now, the day before Notre Dame burned down, on April 14th, we can go to St. Louis, Missouri. Cathedral, April 14. Wind. The day before Notre Dame Cathedral had its fire, in downtown St. Louis, below the St. Louis Arch, there is the old St. Louis of France Cathedral. And the roof blew off. Been there for 200-something years. The roof blew off. This cathedral below the St. Louis Arch, St. Louis of France, on April 14th. Then, April 14th. This was recorded when they rang the bells weirdly. Then the next day, the spire burns down, which is on the scaffolding right behind them. And you see it's all stone anyway. Now, the resonance thing. You ready? Ready to have your mind blown? You might think he was tripping about the churches being used as an antenna or something. Right? You'd think that might not be possible, right? Chartres Cathedral, France. Watch this. Floor. There we go. Inside the cathedral is a floor, a very large labyrinth, as they call it. And make note of the shape of the labyrinth and the size of it. It's big enough for people to walk in. Now, I want you to make note of this shape because of this. You can buy it. A Schumann resonator. The Schumann antenna. And the center is a cavity. See the cavities at the center? Hopefully you guys can see all this. The center. This is the cavity, the resonance chamber. Let me show you an example of a resonance chamber in case you don't know what I'm talking about. But the antenna is obvious. This is the same. It's the exact same. It's a perfect match to the church. Exact match. Down to the point. And you can do a side-by-side to match the numbers of curves and the numbers of, again, exact match of a Schumann antenna. Low-frequency antenna. Schumann resonance, low frequency. Now this gets really, really deep because of a radio wave resonance cavity. Okay. Well, are we going to get a good picture of one or not? Well, here we go. A better way to put this. Magnetron cavity. There it is. Well, I'll be. So what happens? How does this work? How does a magnetron work? You guys want to know how a microwave works? You put electricity into this thing. It goes in and it vibrates around inside of these things, and then it shoots out radio waves. Electricity in, vibrate around on the inside, focus in on a point, boom, out comes radio waves out the other side, basically, inside the cavities. The more cavities you have, the more resonance you get. The more electricity you put in, the more power comes out. Radio waves vibrate out of this thing when you put a power through it. Surrounded by magnets, they put a bunch of magnets around it, and that's how it works, okay? Just simply put, electricity goes into it, electricity vibrates around inside of this thing, it's contained by the magnets, shoots out of a little hole. Out of the hole, then they put it down what's called a waveguide. The waveguide guides the wave to your food, for instance, or out of an antenna, down to an antenna, and it shoots it out the antenna. Now, there's also something called a mercury arc rectifier. Arc rectifier. A mercury arc rectifier, which is a usually bulbous type feature that contains mercury, amongst other things, in a gaseous-like state that passes electricity through it and it produces light. But it also converts radio waves into electricity, and it converts electricity into radio waves. Why does a mercury arc rectifier matter? Well, it gets vibrated by electricity. Well, this gets into Mercury church steeple. And in many old church steeples, you'll find that this is not me talking about this, that they put mercury in old church steeples. So in old church steeples, the old practice was to fill a lot of the statues or the crosses or whatever with the mercury at the top of the church steeple, and sometimes to coat it even in mercury, which is really weird, right? Well, not really if you're talking about going back to this Chartreuse antenna, which I'm probably butchering the way that's pronounced, C-H-R-T-E-S Cathedral, Chartreuse Cathedral. There it is. Now look at the outside of this thing. On the outside, we've got the giant, well, hold on, here it is. We have the cymatic pattern, which is, cymatics is a vibrational thing that happens, that shapes appear out of sound. But you'll notice that look, inside we've got, here, let me see if I can find a bigger picture of this, of the window of the cathedral. There we go. So going around the outside edges, you can count these. We have 8 cavities here. We have 12 cavities here. And then there's 4 cavities here. So there's 4 cavities, 8, and 12 at the center. And this goes in and then down on the floor. Is that the Schumann resonator. And power into it, around the circuit, into the center of the resonator, up and out of it. So, back to Fort Tryon burning. Back to the roof blowing off of the cathedral the night before the St. Louis of France Cathedral, below the St. Louis Arch, which is another resonator, which is built across from the Indian Mounds, in case you don't know. Now, this gets really deep. This gets really, really deep. So, Fort Tryon burns down. We have, within just a few weeks of me talking about it, which is just so weird. And then we have Notre Dame Cathedral burning down within the week of the guy in Russia showing the resonance thing going on there. And we have other examples I'm not going to go into now, which, I mean, other researchers have talked about stuff, and then it gets destroyed. It's too odd. But then when we talk about the connection on St. Louis here, which St. Louis is on the backside of a giant pentagonal star fort that is 300 miles long with a military base built out at the pinnacle tip. And then St. Louis is on the back side here. The mounds are right across from St. Louis right here, where the 2 racetracks are in between them. The Indian Mounds, the Cahokia Mounds. We have the St. Louis Arch. Now this gets me into the St. Louis Arch. The St. Louis Arch, built by Cyril White, or designed by Cyril White. And Cyril White worked for the OSS in World War II, and his side pet projects were weather modification and resonance. You can look this up. It's just amazing. So let me turn on our 3D building so you can see the St. Louis Arch. There we go. Now, Cyril White said that this is meant to represent a full ring, and that the ring of the arch actually is mirrored down in the bedrock, going down underneath it. He said it was intended to, and be a big ring. Now, the ring goes across the river to the big pool and other things that they built, and going out in front of it, they built that. Okay, now what does this mean? Well, Cyril White into resonance and weather modification of all things. Now, it's been said that there's the arch effect for the weather. But the arch is built directly across from the Indian Mounds right here, where they built power lines over and bring down back to the backside of the arch, which is very odd because power lines are operating very low frequency. Now, on the north side of St. Louis is the other star fort, which is right here, and it's actually mirrored in, you can find this in the old maps, and they're building the Geospatial Agency in the middle of this star fort, which is, again, right here, mimicked in the streets still. And I found this on the map from 1700s. It's confirmed that this is the old star fort location. And the old, right up here, or where there's the water coming out for St. Louis. The old St. Louis Water Tower there to both of them, side by side. Water flowing out from the pinnacle tip of the old Star Fort. Anyway, geospatial agency that maps all the United States, does all the LiDAR measurements and maps this kind of stuff, the old forts, and can see down in the ground. They're building their agency in the middle of the old Star Fort without telling anybody. I had to find this on my own and kind of bust them for building in the middle of an old fort that nobody knew was there. On the old maps from the 1700s that nobody knew about except for me just by chance to find it. Anyway, why am I telling you all this? We get back to Fort Tryon now, over in New York. Let's go in and take a look. And my video talking with Bernie and the other guys about Fort Tryon Park. And now it burns? Dude, please, look. I mean, in here is where we were talking about there being the need to investigate. This is just so troubling, okay? So we get down here on the highway side of Fort Tryon, and a lot of it is overgrown, and I talked about this, how it's being hidden by the New York officials. It's no doubt about it. It is being hidden. The old walls that are here that make up the old megalithic structures of the old fort that has been built over, and we're told one thing, but it's something else entirely. Older, way bigger than anything the British could have ever built. So, back to it. It burns. That's why I'm doing this update. The resonance, the frequency, the fires, the earthquakes. The only thing missing from this is an earthquake. The only thing, I hate to joke around, I'm not joking, I mean, the only thing missing or on this would be an earthquake that would strike. But I'm not going to, I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's just too odd for this place to burn. I have to bring it up that we were talking about this on Bernie's show. Not making fun of Bernie's name, I'm just saying, talking about this on Bernie's show, all of a sudden this place burns. The universe is either throwing a weird trick to us or somebody went and burned it. Now, I brought up this, and I'm just going to bring it down here at a ground level. These buildings. The story on the buildings and the story on the bricks. The bricks from the old castle that was here, right? Yeah, they built these. He was feeling really philanthropic and decided to build these housing projects for the poor so he took his castle apart. Out of all the bricks, that's where all the bricks came from, Dutch. Yeah, that's the story on these tall buildings right there. Crazy, right? Well, at least that's what I was told the story was. But I can tell you this, down at the base, down here along the highway or whatever you want to call this, the little interstate that's right there, they've cleared away some of it. And what's not cleared away goes down and is covered. And we're told some of it's Art Deco buildings built such and such in the 20s. And we look up and it looks like more like an old bridge that was covered in the 1920s with concrete. For instance, where they built this on top of it and covered it in concrete. But that there was an old bridge here, maybe. I'm just postulating that it went across there. And that the new bridge now is over here where we built that bridge. But the old bridge used to extend off Fort Tryon and go across this way, and it was much bigger, and just blows everybody's mind that it would even exist at all. And then we have our wall that is covered and hidden on purpose all the way down. And I say hidden on purpose where they deliberately grow it. I'm not kidding. Look. Let's carry on and see if we can see it on the other side. Again, you'd have to tell me that's chance, right? What do we got going on up in there? Looks like something's marked. But it keeps going on and on and on and on and on. There's no way. There is no way the British built walls this big. And you can't tell me those are bluffs. Those are not natural bluffs. They go down to where they cleared it out. The old castle is up in there, and you can see the foundations of the old castle on the backside of the old projects. So it's not up for debate whether or not the old castle extends. We're facing the wrong way. But that the old castle extends all the way back and along and back over to here and back over here. It's miles and miles and miles of huge stone, which they made into a park, and now they burned it, and that's suspicious, hence the video. And we bring it in on the back side of the projects. And when I call them projects, I mean the old apartment complexes that they built for the working class people in the city. You see it goes down, 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 down. That the old castle was here. And this goes into a separate video that I made that I didn't even tell Bernie or the other guys about, which was on the back streets back in here somewhere. I'll have to go dig it up. I don't have the exact location. Somewhere back in here, I found a spot where it was pretty obvious that something is hidden by ivy. And I don't exactly have the location. I'm 100%. It's right back in here somewhere. But it's hidden by ivy on these back streets. And I want to say maybe it's down here. Maybe it is. Let me go see. Hold on. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about stuff hidden. And then it burns. Yeah, okay. So on the ivy. So this is in downtown New York. Okay. Now, you go down the road, and you'll see the ivy is deliberately growing down, and then they block it off. This is the spot that I talked about publicly as being a spot that we needed to come in and look because the ivy was hiding something sticking out like a jutting edge. So our imagery date here is from 2022. Let's go down. The ivy has now been cut off. You can see it. Okay, you see it, right? And now we're going to come down here, and we have an entrance to a subway. You see that? The subway goes, supposedly, into the solid rock and down into the ground. Supposedly, right? Now, up above this, you see this? I'm going to bring this. This is indisputable. This is here. But to show you why it's suspicious that this place burned, I did not show this to Bernie or anybody else. I've shown this before only to my viewers on my live stream. Here's the subway entrance, 190th. Now above it, you see, obviously, you've got the ivy growing over what's stonework. You can see the stonework around the outside edge. Let me zoom in on it. See it? Whoops. Okay, now wait a second. How far does it go up? Look at this. Watch this, guys. It goes up and over, obviously. You can see the ivy growing on that. But one step up, you see there's another pyramid-like structure that's covered. And then up above it, another. And it comes down at an angle on this side, and it comes down at an angle on this side. This is all stone, apparently, covered. Now let's just go down the street and just see if they've removed it in the next drive-by. This is a hidden structure by ivy and trees. Now, to me, it looks like there's also some kind of ornamental... Here, let me bring it back this way. So up on top of here, let me back this out because it's hard to see with the Google car up close like this. There. No, that doesn't really show it either. Hold on. There we go. So up on top, do you see it? It goes up. It's almost like a step pyramid. This is like a facade of some kind. And this is old. This is castle-like. Now, it's been covered on purpose by ivy. And these people are living right across from it in these. And these are built on top, if you go around the other side, on top of these ancient structures, footings. So now check it out. The castle that used to be here had side entrances that went down subterranean, down into the castle's depths. The castle. Fort Tryon Castle. Let's see if we can find the maps of it. Libby Cat, there it is. New York in the 1800s, this guy built this giant castle. And they turned this castle, which is such bullshit, that they tore it down and used the bricks from the foundation. This is the legend. Not my case on it, guys. This is them. Fort Tryon Castle, New York City. Well, guys, now wait a second. Now hold up. It should come up. We're on DuckDuckGo. Okay. Fort Tryon Castle, New York. Unbelievable. There we go. Sort of. Sort of. It's being buried. This should just come up. I can't believe it. It should just come up top search. It shouldn't be that. This is being deliberately hidden, obviously. I mean, it should come up. I mean, it's a freaking famous freaking location. Wow. Fort Tryon. Maybe I just need to remove. I'm mind blown that this isn't coming up. The old plans for the castle that was there is what I'm looking for. I'm glad I'm recording. Other people will be like, dude, I can't believe it's not coming up. I've seen it before. It's got the entrances and everything marked on it. It tells where the old castle was and the entrances for it. The 1935 map for the Fort Tryon Park. Okay. All right. Well, the information I showed publicly is now not coming up at all, and my viewers who saw it when I showed it live on my stream no more than 6 months ago. Now it's all gone, including the old maps. I'm shocked. I really am shocked that they would go to this level. To remove all the old maps and to burn the place? All right. It's like Notre Dame. The Russian guy figures out that the church is used for resonance transmission of some kind of wireless signal or something kind, and then they burn the place down. So help me God, if they burn down Chartres Cathedral, we're going to have a real problem over in France. I'll call conspiracy. I mean, I'm already calling conspiracy, but if anything happens to that dang cathedral where the Schumann resonance antenna is built in, we're gonna have a serious problem. I'm gonna throw a fit. So it looks like there's ancient structures using very low frequency, transmitting wireless power for a long time going back to the Middle Ages. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like, or further. Back much further with the bigger structures. Maybe even further, much further. But I'm going to stand by it now. There is a connection between wireless power and churches. There's too many connections now. Between the Notre Dame Cathedral, the St. Louis Church blowing off, the St. Louis Arch there, all the old megalithic structures burning down. I have to make a video on this and show the world. So I'm going to upload this to my YouTube channel. Everybody gets to go down the rabbit hole on these big structures and how far back this goes. Some kind of wireless power. Think about it. Wireless power going back thousands of years. We're almost, if we go back to the 1200s on that Schumann antenna in the Chartres Cathedral, that's almost 1,000 years ago. And then that would mean it goes back much further. And the big structures that I'm finding, and the earthquakes below them, and the earthquakes, VLF, very low frequency, and these structures, very low frequency, and our current electricity through the power lines is very low frequency, but carried through the lines. And we built the power lines over a lot of these locations that are the megalithic structures. That cannot be overlooked now, over the Indian mounds, and they built the railroads going through those locations too, and we see earthquakes striking below both of those, the railroad lines, and the power lines, and these megalithic structures, and we're seeing fires break out next to them, in them. Now, I don't know how big the fire at Fort Tryon is. Any fire at Fort Tryon, seeing Fort Tryon in the news at all within a few weeks of me doing a report. Hey, everyone, please listen to me. Please listen to me right now. I'm going to take you, before we go, back to St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm going to take you back to Bernie's video, which I don't even have open anymore. I'll take you back and show him. Again, this guy deserves credit, and so does Autodidactic and the other guys who I met with and did a video with. I didn't meet in physical life, but met with online. And their videos which are on their channels and on my channels, where we talk about the St. Louis location. This matters. This really freaking matters. Seriously, this matters. Please listen to me, guys. So I'm talking about this spot over here in St. Louis. And I show the map from the 1700s and show the Star Fort. And the Star Fort is there on the old map. And they're building the Geospatial Agency in the middle. And they have X marks the spot in the middle and the water coming out the tip. On the old map back in the 1700s, and now we have water towers built there. And then I said, I go, literally in the video, I go straight from here to the north, and I said, and this points up here to Fort Bellefontaine. Here. Let me turn on my place mark so you can see where we are. See, Fort Bellefontaine, which is Fort Beautiful Fountain, or Good Fountain. This is a upwelling fountain called Fort Bellefontaine, and I brought it up and told everybody, look, they're digging it out here at the quarry, and we find a lot of quarries next to the spots where the Star Forts are. And I brought up Fort Bellefontaine in my video, where I brought up this Star Fort down here in downtown St. Louis that the Geospatial Agency has to know about, and that's why they're building in the middle, obviously. Why does Fort Bellefontaine matter? Let me show you. Fort Bellefontaine, Army Corps. Within 2 weeks of me making my videos and talking about Fort Bellefontaine from 300 or 400 years ago, that's how old this place is, on March 22nd, 2023, 2 weeks after I mentioned Fort Bellefontaine, this story breaks in our local news. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers suddenly needs to get into the park to dig it up. Look, the federal government is requesting access to a St. Louis County hiking trail to check for and respond to any potential radiological, I'll add in, contamination. It's part of the ongoing effort to monitor areas along the Coldwater Creek, where there was supposedly radiation released. In a letter dated March 10th, 2 weeks after I showed everybody the Fort Bellefontaine was a Star Fort, the head of the St. Louis County Parks and Recreation Department asked County Executive Sam Page to grant right of entry to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to go into Fort Bellefontaine Park to, quote, perform surveys, remediate radiological and chemical contamination of soils, excavate and dispose of contaminated soil, and backfill with suitable soil and restore the property to its previous condition. Now, Fort Bellefontaine has never been in the news. I show that it's a Star Fort, and I show that this Star Fort, where they're building the Geospatial Agency, is pointing towards it, the other Star Fort that's being excavated by private industry, here. And all of a sudden the government wants to come in, here, and dig this up, here, in the park. Because the private industry is already digging on the side. Look how much they've dug out. So the quarry that's there is quarrying out the remnants of the old Star Fort that's there. That's pre-flood Star Fort, and that gets into the flood. And that gets into the Star Forts. And the Star Fort's built right across from here. Over here. Over here are the old Cahokia Mounds. See where it says Fairmount City? Right next to it, Cahokia Mounds. Here are the mounds. Supposedly, the mounds just end here, but I'm here to tell you. The mounds go right down to here where they went right through them with the railroads and the power lines. The railroads and power lines go side by side right down here to the Gateway Arch, where you'd think they would bury them or something, but instead they have them right up here, right in front, so you can't get a good view at all of downtown St. Louis, and they're right across from the arch. They're bringing that power down to the arch, resonance-wise, low frequency-wise. They're not running electrical power to the arch. I'm just saying electrical low frequency-wise. This is all resonating through the plate. You got the mounds, you got the arch, you got the power lines, you got the railroad, you got the star fort, you got the star fort pointing to another star fort, and they're digging up the new one, the one that I showed. Both of them. They're digging both of them up. U.S. Army Corps needs to get into the one up to the north, and the Geospatial Agency is being built in the middle of this one here. And that matches the map that I showed in the video. In case you missed it, and you didn't see it, we can go back and show you some other time. We won't get into that now. Flaming trees and grass at Fort Tryon Park. Let's go take a look. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, we call that fire. Fire bad. Big fire. Been real dry there, has it? Been real dry up there in New York, is it? Super dry. That's what it is. It's arson, Dutch. Well, it would be arson by a group that's trying to hide something. Or burn something away so they can see it. I don't know. Or it's activated and somebody's using it. Who knows? All I know is it's the most suspicious thing in the world for me to be back on talking about Fort Tryon. After just a couple of weeks back, the whole Fort Bellefontaine thing happened with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I can't believe it. Now it's 2 locations that I showed in the same frickin' video that are just hundreds of years old, both in the news in the same 1-month time period. It's insane. You'd have to tell me that's chance, and I don't believe in chance like that. No way. No way. Look, there's chance, and then there's... I just can't believe it. All right, there it is, though. I mean, how often you're talking about Fort Tryon or Fort Bellefontaine? It's a topic of nightly discussion at dinner, is it, kids? All right, much love. I'm going to save this now as a video. We're going to go upload this over to YouTube.